Welcome to Atheist Talk, produced by Minnesota Atheists. Minnesota Atheists practices positive, friendly neighborhood atheism in order to create a community of atheists, to educate the public about atheism, and to promote separation of state and church. We offer free literature and speakers about atheism to the public, as well as a free trial newsletter to anyone interested. We hope that if you like what you see, you'll consider becoming a member of Minnesota Atheists. Remember, if you're interested in us, we're interested in you. This is the first of two programs dealing with science and religion. Are they compatible, or are they eternal enemies? In this first part, we will look at science and religion as they apply to philosophy, specifically worldviews, ethics, and the meaning of life. With us today is Dr. William Maansma. He has a PhD in theoretical physics, a postdoctorate in the history and philosophy of science, and also a Master of Divinity degree. And he's also a Christian. Well, welcome to our program, William.
Well, thank you, August. I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you agreed to come here. You're an adjunct professor at the Institute of Technology at the University of Minnesota.
That's right.
What are you teaching at the university this semester?
Well, this year I'm teaching a course that I'm really enjoying. It's on how the universe began.
Okay.
Science or God. You make it sound like a dramatic conflict.
Mm-hmm.
It adds some drama to the course.
Okay. What kind of students take this course? Are they religious or atheists or a mix?
This is interesting because it's a freshman seminar, a special category of course. That's why it's not an ordinary course in the Institute of Technology on polymers or on physics or something of that sort, but an interdisciplinary thing, looking at the origin of the world from these different perspectives, scientific, philosophical, religious. As a special category, of course, it's offered just to freshmen as an opportunity to be in an advanced kind of seminar with a faculty member, since most of their courses are in large lecture courses. And what we get taking these courses, though, are people who are interested in thinking and digging deeper and learning more. Mm-hmm. So and we get a real spread of people in terms of their point of view. Mm-hmm. So we get some strongly religious people and some strongly scientific people and some people who are trying to navigate the middle ground.
Well, speaking of that, at the university, in addition to teaching, you're one of the leaders of a group called the Galilean Center. What is that?
That's an organization which is inspired by the example of Galileo, as his example of combining leading scientific work with interest in spiritual and ethical questions. Mm-hmm. And that's the area in which we put on discussions and seminars and put out occasional papers on issues that are in society and in the university today.
Okay. So you talk about kind of the bridge or kind of compare and contrast science and religion. You don't see a conflict between science and religion, and the Galilean Center attempts to show that there's no conflict?
That's right, and that's partly true. I mean, clearly there's been conflict, particularly in the 1920s and in the 60s and the 70s, 80s with creationism. There clearly has been conflict historically, but the question that we're posing the question, is that an intrinsic conflict?
Would I have stated it better as is there a conflict between science and God belief? Is that a better way of posing it then? that you can believe in a God, and a God doesn't necessarily have to conflict with science, even though some religions, man-made religions, do.
Yeah.
God belief might not conflict.
That's right. That's one of our basic thoughts. Just we're looking in that middle ground as how to combine the study of meaning and ethics, spirituality with science. How do these different areas relate to each other? How do they fit together to form an integral view of the world?
Okay. Well, now, there's a debate among atheistic scientists as to the relationship between science and religion. It's probably best typified by Stephen Jay Gould on the one hand and Richard Dawkins on the other. Now, Stephen Jay Gould promoted what he called non-overlapping magisteria, that science informs us about the physical world and religion informs us about ethics and the meaning of life. And I want to just read a couple quotes from an essay he wrote about this. This is Stephen Jay Gould. He says, "The lack of conflict between science and religion arises from a lack of overlap between their respective domains of professional expertise. Science is the empirical constitution of the universe, and religion in the search for proper ethical values and the spiritual meaning of our lives." So Stephen Jay Gould is separating science and religion and saying their areas of inquiry don't overlap. What do you think about his point of view?
Of course, Richard Dawkins takes quite an opposite point of view. Want to characterize that briefly?
Okay. Richard Dawkins is a staunch British atheist, says that the spheres do overlap. Basically, he says that religion does make claims in the realm of science, and I'll read an excerpt from him. Let's see. "It is completely unrealistic to claim, as Gould and many others do, that religion keeps itself away from science's turf. A universe with a supernatural presence would be fundamentally and qualitatively different, a different kind of universe from one without. The difference is a scientific difference. Religions make existence claims, and this means scientific claims, such as miracle stories and resurrection stories." So Richard Dawkins says he strongly disagrees with Stephen Jay Gould and says, no, religion is not confining itself to just values and seeking meaning in life. Religion is telling us things about how the universe was created, about there possibly being miracles, resurrections. Is that more in the camp that you're agreeing with Dawkins, you think?
Well, I'm affirming both of them partly.
Oh.
Okay. I'm in the middle, as I appreciate the emphasis that Gould has made to point out that these are different questions of the physical behavior of elements in the world, things in the world, how planets move and how electrons move. That's a different question from how should we live. Ethics and spirituality.
And meaning.
Yes.
Okay.
All of those things. And those are different dimensions of life. So they're worth asking questions about. And we need to, for wholeness in life, we need to deal with all the dimensions of life and raise questions about what sort of reality does that reflect. On the other hand, I mean, so on the one hand, I go with Gould in saying, emphasizing the difference between these questions, which Dawkins really doesn't like.
Right.
He doesn't want to admit that there are any valid questions outside of scientific questions.
Well, I think he would say that you can apply science to ethics and to the meaning of life, and we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
We'll back up here and talk just about the description of the physical world.
Yeah. So on the Dawkins side, I agree that the different dimensions do interact, even though they're their own spheres, and they operate on their own.
And to the extent
principles.
that religion is going to comment on the physical world, it's fair game for criticism by science.
That's right.
You know, if
That's right.
if someone says, you know, I saw this person rise from the dead, a scientist has a right to say, well, what evidence do you have?
Yeah.
You know, do you...
How do you know the person really was dead?
Was dead, exactly.
Or the universe is 6,000 years old versus 13.7 billion years old. You know, that's a...
It's a claim about the physical world.
It's a claim about the physical world.
And so then we're right to say, what evidence do you have?
That's right. Now, scientific answers, like other answers, there's always room for error, there's room for uncertainty, for finding better answers later. Not saying that in any area our knowledge is partial. It's good to be humble in any area of understanding in life, including science.
Okay, fair enough. I think the way I and other atheists see it is, talking about now just science and religion and the physical world now, that in the early history of humans, we didn't have science, we didn't know how the world operated. And so we had mysterious things like lightning and earthquakes and disease. And we just said God did it, or a devil, which is another kind of a God. But usually, you know, God was responsible for whatever we saw, life.
Some sort of
Supernatural, spirit, God, yeah. But that wasn't enough of an answer. So people wanted to know how God did it. You know, okay, God creates lightning, but how does he do it? So then we come up with electricity and the plate tectonics causing the earthquakes and viruses and germs causing disease and evolution causing life. And the theist says, okay, I accept science, the scientific explanations, but that doesn't rule out God. God created these things. God created the electricity and the earth with the plates moving. And the atheist then says, well, you know what? We no longer have need of that God hypothesis. We don't have to speculate about God. We can just accept the universe as it is. How it began, we don't know. But you know what? The religious people don't know either. Nobody knows. And furthermore, from the atheist point of view, when you start saying a God did it, that raises some questions. For example, who or what created God? What is a God? What is it composed of? If you say a spirit, well, what's a spirit? How does the non-material world interact with the material world? So if God's not part of the material universe, how does it, if a God wanted to lift this book, or a ghost or a spirit, how would he do it? How would it, happen? How does God create something from nothing? We're not given the method of how that happens. And how can we test any of these answers? If we could get an answer to any of these questions, how do we test it? So the atheist has said there's no evidence for God. We don't need a God. And of course, and the theist says, well, yes, you still need a God to explain these things. Have to be explained, and God's the best explanation. How do you view this? Well, I'll let you talk now.
Well, at least from this theist point of view, the question is, what worldview makes the most sense out of what we know about the world, about life? What worldview makes it all hang together, pulls things together? Pulls what together? Well, all of our experience. We need to come to some kind of explanation. And some of our experience of a table, is explained most simply by supposing there's a table there. Now, I mean, I have some experience. It seems to me like there's a table. I can check on that. I ask you. But there are other dimensions to life that seem awfully real, like right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Even ethics, in some ways, seem very real. Even different cultures may have different practices, but if you probe beneath the surface, there are values that run across. So it seems as though there's some sort of reality there. And then there's spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. There seems to be some sort of a transcendent presence there. Mm-hmm. Now, from the approach to this, then, that I tend to take is all these different phenomena, and here I have a unified explanation for them. Mm-hmm. Both the physical, the ethical, the spiritual, the aesthetic, other areas of life we could talk about. And I have a unifying explanation in a creator God.
Okay. Now, from an atheist point of view, it seems to me it's kind of a God of the gaps, even in these other areas, that you haven't actually shown us that a God has given us an ethical system, and you haven't shown us that a God is responsible for these mystical experiences. I think what you're saying is we can't account for them in the materialistic worldview, and therefore God did it, because that's the best explanation. But you actually haven't proven your case for these other things.
True. It has to be argued. That's true. And the question is, well, people through history have come up with different explanations, say, for the spiritual experience. And but you need something like spiritual experience or mystical experience, I think, to explain why people would think of a God or a spirit as explaining things happening in the universe.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
why the sun comes up every morning. Well, it's because in an animistic culture, in a more primitive culture, earlier culture, people would say it's typically because the sun has decided to get up that morning. Some morning it might decide not to. So that's why we do sun dances and offer sacrifices and that sort of thing, to be sure.
Or rain dances to have the rain god bring us some rain.
Yes. And but that's a bringing together of the experience of seeing the sun come up and go across the sky and set with the mystical experience that people feel on watching a sunset.
Now, don't you think it could also be explained that, yes, people do have mystical experiences, and they dream too. So our brains can imagine all kinds of things. And in a primitive society, we anthropomorphize nature. We see that we can throw a rock, and so maybe a god is throwing a hailstone or something.
Yeah.
You don't think that could explain it?
Well, the difference is this. I mean, if I know I can throw a rock, and I can see my friend throwing a rock, but I look at him and say, yeah, he looks like me, he talks like me, he's like me. There's probably a mind there. That makes sense. But when I see a rock fall from a cliff, the trouble with the hypothesis that there's a mind, the cliff is angry with me, as these people in these cultures have said. I mean, that's falsified, that's made incredible by looking at the cliff and seeing, well, that doesn't look anything like the beings I know that have minds, that is me and my people. And so if they didn't have, if it were not for the universality of mystical experience, it makes you feel like there's some kind of a transcendent presence there, then surely people wouldn't be attributing favor or malevolence to things like rocks on the hillside.
Well, when I see a rock fall, it doesn't occur to me that there's any, God pushing it. And
Yeah.
haven't most of our gods been very human? They say, we're created in God's image, but it seems more the reverse, that you look at the Greek gods and the Roman gods, and even the Christian God of the Old Testament seems very human with his anger and his wants and things like that.
Oh, sure. In Genesis 2, God shows up in the garden and to walk after sunset. Hey, where are you guys?
Yeah. So I think, especially with the savior gods, like the Jesus figures and other savior gods, pagan ones, there's this unknown, this nature is this unknown force, and sometimes a person comes along, we're looking for a connection to that force.
Yeah.
And sometimes people come along with insights like maybe a Jesus or other characters to act as our intermediary between the unknown.
Maybe
and
another great
human life.
teacher.
Yeah. But I think scientists are fulfilling that function now to bridge the gap between humans and the mysterious unknown.
Well, there are a number of mysterious unknowns, and one of those is the nature of atoms, of the electron that we all rely on so much every day. Understanding the electron, and in that sense, we take images we're familiar with, a particle, ripples on water, and we apply it. But we know that a stream of electrons is something more complex than all of those. And so, yes, we use, in thinking of the transcendent, in thinking of God, we think of a person. But allowing that the reality of God is no doubt greater and beyond than we can understand or articulate at any one time.
Yeah. Well, granting that we might not know exactly what an electron is, but yet we can detect it as a streak on a plate, and we can detect it in the physical world, but we can't detect any mystical or supernatural element to it that I know of.
Oh, but we
So just because it's mysterious, does that mean it's mystical or supernatural?
Every time when you're stopped by the beauty of a sunset, at least most times, I sense a transcendent presence.
Yeah. Well, many atheists have
So
an appreciation of beauty and art, but we don't attribute it to a God. We feel emotionally ecstatic, like, wow, and this is more joyous than our normal everyday experience. But it doesn't occur to us to attribute it to anything outside of ourselves and our minds, which are, to us, are part of our brains. And we'll talk about that more in the second part of this program.
Yes, right. Yeah, very, very often the experience of the transcendent feels as though there's a presence like another person, in some ways like another person, and the prima facie explanation of that is that there is such a presence there. Now, we may be able to explain it away by saying, oh no, that's an illusion. But the prima facie evidence would say,
I've never
if there
felt like
seems to be a presence there, there probably is a presence there, especially when I talk with so many other people and find that they have similar experiences.
But I've never had that experience of feeling that there was another person or being there. I've never felt that, never have. And we also know that people can talk to themselves and create an alternate personality within their own brain. So perhaps that could explain it.
Well, I think it is possible to explain away all sorts of experience. Even physical experience, it's quite possible to explain away. I mean, we know people, say, who have their legs amputated still get itchy toes. It feels like it's down there. It doesn't
Right.
feel like it's here at the
Right.
amputation point. It feels just like they have a a foot. So it's it's certainly possible that even though there seems to be a table here, that there's not.
Well, if we're going to go to that level of doubt, we probably can't conclude anything to doubt that even if the table is here. Which you could do, philosophically, you could doubt it, but I think if we...
What's most indubitable, as Descartes said, is our own experience.
We can't doubt that we're doubting.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we've got like 2 minutes left, and I just want to go back a little and touch on ethics. And Gould saying that ethics come from religion, and you saying that ethics can't come from the material world, that they have to come from some transcendent sense. But yet, we do see differing views on ethical things from, even within the same religion, even say within Christianity. There's no agreement on homosexuality, divorce, the death penalty, premarital sex.
Invasion of Iraq.
So, yeah. Why are we getting these mixed messages from this divine force then?
Well, ethics I take to be a different dimension or a separate dimension of reality, things that are right and things that are wrong. And just because there's a God doesn't mean this God is necessarily good or
interesting.
or a good teacher. I mean, look at the stories of the Greek gods. You know, that,
or even the Old Testament, there's some really horrible things in there.
well, that's another case. But the difficulty there is to put together the affirmations that this is a good God with some of the things you're talking about. How does that make sense? But the pagan gods are never claimed to be good.
Well, at least that fits reality better.
It's easy, yeah. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Exactly, yeah.
The gods are angry with me.
They're angry, or they're incompetent, or they don't care, or indifferent, incompetent, or...
Yes, that's right. But that is the problem of evil.
Yeah. So even though these gods are more compatible with what we see, there's still no evidence they exist. But at least there's no internal contradiction anymore.
I'd say
of an all-perfect God.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Well, we're out of time. It really went quickly.
Yes, it did.
I want to thank you for joining us on the show. And we have another one coming up where we'll talk about the things we didn't get to on this show. And thank you for joining us on Atheist Talk. If you'd like more information about Minnesota Atheists, you can contact us at the address you see at the end of the show. We'll be happy to send you a free sample newsletter. And we hope that if you like what you see, you'll consider becoming a member of Minnesota Atheists. If you're interested in us, we're interested in you.